And this one's really provocative. Vocal triggers. What's behind the way we speak to each other? But first, we're going to get a recap of what happened last week with segment number one, the recap. Monifa, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, last week we were talking about, does anybody really give a shit? That was the last week video. Hey, we had some really great insight. Dara pulled in some of that research, got those receipts on what is it? Like, why does it feel like everybody stopped caring about what's going on? Or even trying to do better. It feels like sometimes people aren't even trying to do better anymore. They're just complacent, you know? And so we're like, well, I mean, we're trying to do shit. Does anybody else give a shit? And
I give a shit.
Yeah, it was pretty good because we talked about, we had a question come in about being able to do creative work and how do we build creative businesses without looking like everybody else, right? And what comes up around that? What's useful about modeling people, what's not? But essentially, I think the more you care about your business and you give a shit, if it's coming from a heart-centered place, sometimes it gets even emotionally bogged down. So how do we juggle that? We talked about that last week. And then, yeah, what does it take? Like, what does it take for people to recognize what it takes to make a community of people, you know?
Give a shit. And I talked about being authentic and about not getting caught up in someone else's swag, so to speak, and being your own person and what it looks like to do that, which basically requires you to know who you are, which comes from another episode 2, I believe, of Unking Insight. So make sure you go back and look at all of those episodes you missed. Leave some questions. We'll go back. We always go through those episodes. We always go through the questions. We always go through the comments to find questions. So if there's something on one of those episodes, we'll be more than happy to recap them for you and bring you up to date on some Unking Insight and some transformation from the Diva.
Yes, and remember, we're always interested in collaborating, building community. So if you have something you want to share with us, or if you want to be in a spotlight and hang out with us for one of the episodes, contact us and see what we can put together. It'll be fun. We can co-create over here. So what's the title of this episode, Daryl?
Vocal triggers. What's behind the way we speak to each other? So what we're going to do now is go to our segment number 2, in which Monifa is going to give us a moment of transition that's based on being triggered by someone. And we all get triggered. Let's not get it confused. Everyone has something that they can trigger us with. And the closer the person is, the more of a bigger trigger he carries.
That's right. Yes, yes. So what do we do about that? Because most people find public performance a trigger, right? Like most people are a little worried about showing up in public and stating your piece, stating your mind, having a stance, because we always know there's an argument against it, right? And I think people who are thinkers already have an idea of what people could say about what they're saying. But I think it slows us down. So one of the things that I like to do is just go straight at it somatically. So we're going to talk about what does breath have to do with being able to state your mind with confidence in maybe even harsh environments. But I think the scariest thing is just not even knowing what the reception will be, right? Like, you know, people are out there who have their own ideas. How are they going to take what I have to say, right? So usually that would bring up some level of nervous energy. You know, something I never gave enough credit, I think, also is that if you really care about people, if you really want to help somebody, you also care about what they think. right? So even when we're talking about, like, sometimes I say, sometimes you just got to forget about the people who are just going to be naysayers to begin with. I think a lot of us are worried about that, but not everybody. Not everybody's worried about a naysayer, but you may be worried about people that you do respect the opinion of, that you do want to help, and that you really are trying just to show up your best for them. So it brings up that nervous energy of, can I get it right? Will I get it right the first time? Or am I going to sound crazy and they won't get what they need, right? So it can be pressure, all kinds of pressure. I know I used to get really wigged out before some church performances because I felt like it's a spiritual life. Like, this is important. That's like the most important thing to me is spiritual life and walk, right? So I want to be my best for the environment of spirituality that they're creating, right? So there's always something, but we want to know what side we're on of that. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Anyways, going back to the breath, the reason why the breath is the first thing I go to is because it's the fastest thing that makes a difference. It's going to change your body chemistry immediately. So this is pretty simple. So you're going to do it with me. We're going to breathe all the way out. That's what we're doing. Okay. So we're going to breathe all the way out, and we're going to go to S's. We're going to feel that stomach. See how that feels. Feeling the back of the body, breathing back into the lower belly. When you breathe in, you don't want to tank up as much as you want to just relax the belly and the muscles you're just feeling into and just open up fully and release.
Just let go.
Just let go. Just let go. So we're going to do that a couple more times, breathing all the way out. And just notice with each breath, how do you feel differently? Are your eyes doing different things? Relax, let that breath back in. So that second breath deeper than the first breath, breathing all the way out. You notice that the quality of my voice changes. It's less strident, maybe. Breathing back into the lower belly. But still fairly resonant, right? Like I can hear most of my voice. So what we're doing there is we're actually using the vagus nerve, which is a natural biological aspect of everybody's body, to help us to move out of fight or flight, triggers, response, to a focus that we choose. Okay? And so what happens when we tone the vagus nerve or trigger the vagus nerve to tone with our voice, what we did right there was with the breath, but that's what a really full deep breath or really full out breath does. But the breath out, what that'll do is basically force a certain closure in the vocal cords, which allows for the exact place where that meets the vagus nerve at the top of the spine. So, and it goes into the head, but at the top of the spine is where it meets. So yeah, so that's what allows us to just use our natural biology to just come a little bit more focused, be able to pay attention to what we want to pay attention to, ignore the things that aren't part of what we're up to. And so I use it for every day just as a way to like be in my presence and my awareness around what I'm doing.
It's also a great relaxer, but the thing I really want to touch on is ever since I ever heard the phrase fight or flight, right? And then it's like, okay, either I'm gonna fight or I'm gonna run. There's a third option. The third option is stay present, stay grounded, be in the moment. I don't have to fight or flight, and I guess that comes from sales and being in sales for 28 and a half years is that you're going to hear no. You're going to hear no all the time. And you can either run away from it, you can argue with it, right? You can use a rebuttal that becomes more argumentative, or you can stay present. You can really get into hearing and listening to what someone is telling you. Be present for them. Hold space which is like the first time I'm ever using that phrase, but it makes sense in this moment. You hold space in your groundedness. You hold space in your being present. And sometimes fight or flight doesn't have to be the only option.
That's right. And what I'm always trying to remind people of is that there's really no point in doing anything without presence. As an introvert, somebody who is naturally energy conservative,
Whatever
um,
that is.
at least that's how I spent the majority of my youth trying to save energy, conserve energy and time. It doesn't work out. Don't work that way. It's like breathing. You got to breathe to breathe. You got to breathe to get the more oxygen. The more you try to save it, the less you have. Right? That's what I've learned in my wisdom walk with myself. So, but yeah, that essentially anything that you do without awareness, you don't know what happened. Right? You have a subconscious idea. You have your patterns that probably played out, right? But do you know what they are? Do you know what was good about it? What was bad about it? Do you know if you got it right, if you were perfect and you did everything exactly the way you wanted to, but you're not present, you're not aware, can you do it again? Because that's where confidence comes from, is being able to do it again, right? Um, and that feelingness in the body that you get from being able to do it again, right? That's why practice can make confidence or perfection. But it's not about that. It's about trusting yourself to be able to meet the moment however it goes, whether it's great or bad. And then at least if it goes poorly and you're aware, you're like, okay, if this and this happened, don't want that to happen again. Let me try it a different way. And then you can take notes. What works, what doesn't work. What works, what doesn't work, right?
Life is a science experiment.
Yeah, so that's my thing. It's like, okay, yeah, you can just do life and not pay attention if you want to. But like, and I know this from voice too, y'all. Like I've seen it. Like people sing, especially when they're younger and all, you're just naturally healthy and vibrant and energetic. And then as you get older, you lose your capacity to sing because you never actually knew what was happening. And you were putting strain on the voice, you weren't paying attention. The voice is going easily, you weren't paying attention, right? Because you were just doing it. And then when it comes to the time when you have to maybe make corrections, get back into alignment, that's how we think of it too in voice, is you don't know what to do about it. But either way, that's what we have. That's what I'm for. You can come to me if you feel like you just don't know what's going on, right? Speaking or singing. So that's what I like to help people out with.
All right, let's move into segment 3, the unking insight. And because it's such a really big theme, what we're talking about here today, um, in terms of being triggered by other people, it's a great way to have young people understand. So, nieces, nephews, come on over here. Let me holler at you. Okay, I'm a Gen Xer. Okay, I didn't have a voice. You understand? You didn't have options in the 70s and the 80s. In the 90s, things started to break a little clearer because we became parents and we understood what we didn't like, right? But you guys have your full voice capacity. Most of you have it before you're even teenagers in your household. I didn't have a voice. I was given instructions. You know, I was given orders. I was given rules. I didn't have any say in any of those things. And being who I am, I rebelled against all of it. Like I am Captain Rebel. You guys don't have that. So it's more important today, I believe, for you guys to fully understand what it is that you can help your parents with in terms of um, how you're receiving those orders, those instructions, and those rules. You actually have a say. And a part, what I like about this younger generation is that you're not afraid to express yourself. You kind of remind me of myself a little. I've never had the fear of expressing myself. And 9 times out of 10, me expressing myself created a corporal punishment situation. You know, my parents and my parents' generation believed in spare the rod, spoil the child. Now, that is also true because you guys are spoiled, but I don't think you're spoiled in a bad way. You guys don't run around doing a whole lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. You have more awareness than we had as young kids. I'd stay outside all day in them. It didn't bother me. We play all day in the sun. We lied up with the flu for the next 2.5 weeks. So you guys have an advantage in that your awareness is much higher than our awareness was at your age. But that comes with a lot of responsibility. And I tell all young people that life is meant to be experienced. And as you go and you grow and you have these experiences, that's when you start to know more. That's when you gain knowledge. Okay. Now that knowledge time is going to go through your 20s. And when you get through your 20s, when you start hitting your 30s, that knowledge becomes more wisdom. Right. So I tell all the people that I speak with and mentor and help, you got to go through these things. And your voice matters now more than it ever has. I guarantee you every person under 20 right now has more followers than their parents. More people listen to you on a daily basis than your parents ever had people listening to them at that age. That's a huge, huge source of power. But that power requires some responsibility, right? So take the time to know yourself, to know what you like, to know what you don't like, but also know why. And also know what those whys are impacting in you while they're happening. Does that make sense? I'm glad it does. Let's move on to segment 4, the mailbag. Now, we don't have any questions this week, but Monica has something for us.
Oh, I can't say the name. Damon Harris did not give us any question.
You see, when I say it, he doesn't believe it. When she says it,
I say you'll help us with a question, and you never answer the question, never give us the question or submit it, and we don't appreciate it. Okay?
That's her mama voice. That's her mama voice. You said you were gonna do it, dude. You should have did it. Now there's a Jamaican after you. So don't blame me. I didn't even. This is not something I prompted her to do. This is all she's doing it. Impromptu, so to speak. But the mailbag, guys, is for your questions, your comments. All 6 previous episodes are on YouTube and Monifa's account. So it's Monifa Harris on YouTube. You can go to there and scroll till you see podcasts, and you'll see Diva The Unk there. Just go through those 6 episodes, see what you like and don't like, and what questions come to your mind and to your heart as you're watching those, and submit them. The episodes, none of them are more than an hour and 2 or 3 minutes. They're very interesting. They're very thought-provoking. So that's what this show is all about, to get you guys thinking. You have a diva, someone who deals with the divine feminine, and you have an unk, someone who's going to give you grounded information that allows you to grow. So take advantage of that mailbag. And if you have any special talents, we'd love to get you on to talk about your insights and your journey and how things are working out for you in that mailbag session. So that mailbag is open for you guys. We'd love to powwow and kick it with you.
Yeah.
So take advantage of that.
So what I tend to do is, like, in my interactions with people and what I've been asked over the week, even if I don't get a mailbag, but I really would like to hear from you because I want to help people directly if I can. So tell me what you would say. So the So what somebody came to me with, and let me know, because some of us know about astrology, some of us don't. But somebody came to me with, I was doing some readings, and she was like, I want to know about my career. What chart should I use? So the options are Western astrology, Gene Keys, and human design. So some people haven't even heard of Gene Keys. So you let me know if you even heard. Have you heard of him? Which one have you heard of? Right. That's what I want to know. Number one, and number two, if you know of any of them, which one would you choose? I mean, if you know at least two of them, which one would you choose to go to first if you were going to give somebody some input on what career would look like for them? So so for me, what I chose, if you're curious, is human design. Okay, so now my favorite astrology is Gene Keys. My go-to is what I study, is what I contemplate. I even take it into meditations. I've done vocal meditations on Gene Keys because there's so much wisdom there. And human design, obviously, was very interesting to me because of the body graph, because of all the extra information. It's like they're trying to be Vedic, but not, you know what I'm saying? Human design comes with a lot of information. And I am an information person. And then the Western astrology, which is just like the old head. I've known it the longest, right? And it does give a lot of great information about everything. You just have to look in the right place. And I still chose human design. And I would say my favorites are Gene Keys astrology, human design.
I think my favorite would probably be Gene Keys because Gene Keys deals with the amino acids. It deals with the chemical makeup that's happening within you. Because every stage you go through, like anger, has a different chemical reaction than being blissful, right? There's totally different chemicals happening in your body um, during those two different aspects of who we are. So I like Gene Keys because Gene Keys deals chemically within your body and it deals with um, the process. So everything that Gene Keys is about the process, and it identifies where you are in the moment, right? So knowing where you are in that moment and then knowing the path that's laid out before you is, I like that better. To me, when I heard it the first time, and it's funny, we started in Gene Keys when you were going through your battle, your health battle, and we were going up and down, back and forth to Stanford, and we'd be listening to those tapes and CDs and stuff by Richard Rudd. And, they're just a little hard to listen to at first, but as you start to understand the lingo and the words that he's using and what they mean, it became really, really clear, as to first it gave us an idea of why we were going through this physically. It really identified the amino acids that are involved in things like illnesses and what part of your body, literally what organs are impacting you in this moment based on something that you're probably not even showing on a daily basis, but what's going on inside of you that's happening in real time. And those acids and those chemicals that are happening in you are impacting you. That impact doesn't show, it doesn't happen right away, but they are impacting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just has so many practical aspects, and yet, like, the more you understand it, the more like life makes sense. But more importantly, the more you make sense, and I think when we get a grasp of ourselves, we get to make better choices, right? And so,
Or
yeah,
not.
so, or choose not to, but at least you're aware that
Correct. Awareness is the key.
awareness is nice because even if you're doing something that you're like, oh, maybe repercussions, then you at least have it's coming, right? Like, I don't know. But, and also, you can also, I think sometimes our higher selves, once we are doing something in awareness, I do sometimes believe we're absolved. Have you seen, I don't know, like for me, it brings up people that are like, gurus and they smoke and they're, or they're, um, they drink a ton of wine, but they look 10 years younger than they did 20 years ago, right? Like stuff of like that. I think, again, if you have enough, or you're putting enough awareness work in, and you're consciously choosing something and you do it without the shame and the guilt, then I think you can absolve the repercussions. You know, I was like, no comment. I didn't like that one.
Can you absorb the repercussions?
Absolve.
Absolve.
So yeah, I think
The
absolve.
repercussions are the absolving of behavior.
Well, I think, yeah, I think that's true, and I also think that a lot of the what we think is wrong about something is actually not the thing that's wrong. It's about how we feel about that thing, what it means to us, what choices we're making when we make that choice, right? I think if you're drinking wine because you love life and you love life experience, and you're also taking care of your mental and spiritual bodies, like, and doing things physically, I think you get some passes. Unless your body is just telling you no. If you're just ignoring signals, that's one thing.
Yeah, I also think it matters where you are on your path.
Yeah.
If you're, in your early 20s and you're still a young person, you get a pass on a lot of this stuff. You know, it's part of growth. It's part of your growth.
Like those ones catch up with you though. Because that's what I'm saying. If you do it without awareness, those things will eventually catch up with you.
Well, that is what catches up with you.
It is. It's either going to catch up mentally or physically or spiritually.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Like your ability, your capacity to self-regulate, they call it conduct, self-lead. So, anyways, what's the point? The point is, we're talking about what would be a good chart to be in to choose for a career. So, I chose human design. Why? Because it gives us a thing called channels, and it tells us what things are already kind of hooked up into full flow just by nature of us being here. Now, if you don't trust charts right off the top, just by saying, yeah, they're giving us good information, go ahead and follow it, then you want to use it. I think it's still a great place to say, hey, this is the feature of your chart. Do you feel like you've experienced that? Right? I feel like that's always a great way, because either way, you're not asking questions to better know who you are, what you like, what you don't like. These are the things we need to know if we want to do a whole life or a whole 10, 20 years in a thing, which is hopefully at least we're spending 10 years in a career. It might be shorter nowadays, but or in the future. But essentially, if you're going to spend real time and investment, and hopefully, even if you do change what your jobs are, you're generally learning and growing and creating more understanding around something.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, that's the goal. And so, anyways, I chose human design because it's giving us those anchors of what's just going to naturally start flowing and functioning for you. That means that you can put out better things than other people with just being yourself. I don't say no effort, but with no additional effort. You're not gonna have to work harder at being yourself. You are who you are, right? And again, if you don't take it for face value, then ask if that's true for you. If it's true for you, then that's who you are, right? Like, so yeah.
I think human design works when you already have your Western chart. It works better when you have an idea. If you've never done anything, I would definitely start with a Western chart. I would start with a chart. Let's not just call it Western. I would start with a chart. And that, once you understand that chart or get some information on your Western chart, then the other charts kind of make more sense to you. That's like baby steps, getting your Western chart. And then those other charts are like paths.
The Western chart is the basis of all charts. Outside of, I mean, that's not to be crazy.
Chinese charts.
But essentially, the wheel, the astrology wheel, is the basis of almost every chart. Like even Zolkin may not have this. I think they have 13. They have 13 spaces, but essentially, it's still a wheel, right? And there's, I don't know the Sultan very much, but I know like the Chinese astrology, they're not going to give you a wheel off the top, but they do have a formulation that can show in that way. They're more likely to use a square. But and then Vedic, you know, they all have wheels. They all
Yeah.
have wheels. If you go into like a
I
app,
think Chinese are just trying to be different.
no, they just got it more accurate. Chinese, Vedic, I would say are more accurate. But Western astrology is more direct. Like what I love about Western astrology is that it's the actual seasons of the year. You can be like, it's not the right astrology chart. And I'll be like, nobody cares. Like we have the same physical generators to grow food every year. That's how we human on the planet, right? Everything evolves around the seasons. So I think it's very natural to especially if you're thinking about anything about creating something manifestation. If you're not using a Western chart, I'm like, why not? A Vedic though, it's going to give you good information on biology too. It's going to give you great information on career path. It's going to give you, but I don't do Vedic because it's more in depth. You want like a master to teach you, and it's more. I like to learn intuitively with charts.
Right.
So, but yeah, that was my choice. I just chose human design because it gives a lot of feedback about what's the nature of the area you want to be in, what's the nature of like your personality and how people see you, but also what are you into? Like what would motivate you as opposed to what people want from you, right? And then you want something of a balance so that people feel that they're served and they see the value of that you offer, and you can do it fairly easily because it comes naturally to you, and then you can grow from there. You can add skills from there, but lean on what you do best. It's my way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and just to wrap up this part, like Western charts also deal with the elements. So you're talking earth, water, fire, and air. And it does highlight that, you might be a water sign, but you have a lot of other earth elements, that might even neutralize some of your water aspects. So Western chart, like I said, is a great start because it does kind of give you a really good overview of how you work from the point of your birth and the point of who you are. So it's a great, I like to call it a great foundation for when you know that. And the other ones require that foundation when you're going to do it.
yeah.
Okay. So, segment 5, this week's topic. And like I said, guys, vocal triggers. Now, vocal triggers is a great word, but what's behind the way we speak to one another? Where's that coming from? Like these vocal triggers that we deal with, it's people talking to us. It's the way, like I grew up, like I said, where I wasn't asked questions. I was given orders, given commands, given demands, and things of that nature. So it wasn't really about me having a choice. My choices didn't come, till I left my parents' home, So, but you guys have it a little different right now. So, with that being said, I went into more of the histrionics of, because I can only speak from my perspective, which is Black American, copper colored being, some might call us the planet natives, and what my direct ancestry sort of went through. So when you're triggered by someone speaking to you and the way it affects you, like there's a true chemical reaction happening inside. So for us as people of color, we had to deal with things like slave code silence. Like during slavery, black voices were largely restricted. In many states, enslaved Africans were forbidden to even speak in groups, read aloud, or pray publicly. Like you weren't allowed to read. So if you're reading aloud, that tells them, hey, where you doing with all that money? And the bank just got robbed and you ain't supposed to have money, right? So speaking out of turn could result in lashes or even worse. Um, that trained generations to speak cautiously and quietly. Like my family, my mom is from Georgia, my dad is from Alabama. They were both born, my dad in the late 30s and my mom, the early 50s. So they were brought up in this Jim Crow society of etiquette for us. Black people had to say yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to white people, regardless of their age or status. Like a little 7-year-old can tell a 50-year-old adult, what to do, what not to do. Don't look me in the eyes. Put your head down. Called you out your name. Called you boy. They did all types of things. That's a degrading experience for people, and that goes into your subconscious. It keeps you from speaking with confidence when you can't tell a 5-year-old to kick rocks. You know what I mean? That's crazy to me. That's crazy talk. Um, and that grew into something different because now we're dealing with labels. As an African American man, I don't walk around smiling. I'm not walking around trying to make you feel comfortable when I walk into a room. And to be quite honest, most people get a little uncomfortable when I walk in a room if you're not secure in yourself. You know, um, Women of color were labeled angry because they had boundaries. Because they spoke their mind. My mom, even growing up, being born in 1950, she was a woman who spoke her mind. She moved up north before she was 6 years old and lived in New Jersey. So that gave her a little leeway. Um, but she was held back from promotions and things like that because she was considered the angry black woman. But she was just, standing her own ground on her truth. And that's not looked upon for our people as a positive aspect of who we are. And you have, for black men, you're either a Sambo or you're some crazy buck who's willing to do anything to hurt people. We didn't have a lot of choices. Our personalities were constricted by these social rules, which were the norm in this country and Caribbean countries. So these are the things that we're the stereotypes and the uh, the social constructs that we're just now starting to break out of. We're just now starting to be able to express ourselves fully. And for a lot of people, that's triggering. It's triggering for a person to stand up for themselves if you've never seen people stand up for themselves. You can get triggered. I've worked on not being triggered. We used to have the saying growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Well, words are very powerful and very painful if the right person speaks them to you in a way that makes you uncomfortable. You know, just like by using techniques that Monifa was talking about, you can begin to be more present. You can begin to be in the moment through breath. But it still requires an effort for you to do some research as to why that is, which I had to do a lot in my walk as well. So, any thoughts on that topic, Sweetie?
Absolutely, yeah, because I think there's so many different things that trigger us as human beings. And having a good understanding of your triggers really helps you to navigate, again, like your life and what you're trying to do with it. And so there's always that kind of that front line of triggers that there the things that trigger the people in your family, like overfighting words in your family, overfighting words on your block, right? That might not be correlative to other people's fighting words. And that's what I think as an empath, I'm always sensitive to, but also just being able to know that cross culturally there are different things in play. right? I tend to, because I'm first generation American, I recognize when other people have like kind of a different set of rules, so to speak. Um, and so I think it's a combination of understanding like what your triggers are, being able to sense when other people are triggered, and then the presence of mind to be able to know what you want to do about it. All right. I think it's important that you honor your feelings and you honor other people's feelings, and that, but first and foremost, you want to know where you are, where you stand, right? Because otherwise, we get programmed by other people's triggers or people triggering our triggers to get a specific reaction from us. We just heard this conversation, what was it from, like, but they were talking about universal laws, Gaia. It was Gaia. I love Gaia.
Get a Gaia.
I just don't remember the
Get a
lady's
Gaia
name.
subscription.
I was trying to remember the lady's name, but I don't know it. But anyways, but she was talking about how there is like a plan of action that this has been in place in governments and like, and this is just one of those things that people use as almost like a wartime strategy that they started using on a what do you call it, a peaceful civilization policy, just to get people to do what you want, like vote for them, right? And so what happens is they do an action that they know you're going to react to in a specific way. So if you're reacting, which is usually out of a pattern or a trigger, then they know what you're going to do next. And then they kind of use that to direct you into what they want you to do next, right? So because they already know what your reaction is going to be. And so they give you a place to like to do it, in other words, or a thing to do it with, or money to spend it on, right? Like, so they give you a place to do that. And so that's why I think it's important. Not just, I think it's important for the things that you're trying to create for yourself, because if you don't know your own triggers, then you're probably getting rerouted all the time to things that aren't what you want to be doing with your life. And if you are on social media at all, I said this on, let me start second recording now. It says on the first recording is that you need to know what you're voting with. You need to know what you're voting with. You're voting with your dollar, you're voting with your attention, you're voting with your voice, you're voting with your clicks, right? So if you click on something, I want you to know why, right? If it's entertainment and you're like, I don't need to know why I'm entertained by this, that's okay, but maybe review it before you spend another 2 hours the next day and then say that I don't have time to do what I want to do or care about doing or building or creating. I do this with myself all the time. I am far from perfect. Trust me, trust Daryl will tell you. But it's still something that I think about. And if I hadn't, I would not be as organized as I am today, which is way better than it was before. So anybody that got a problem with it, listen, I'm working on it. I am working on it. And I am 10 times better than I used to be. I used to lose whole days because I forgot what I was supposed to be doing. Right? And so notice, like I notice when I watch too many of those fast videos. I mean, I do like, neurodivergence over here, so it could be that I've watched too many of those fast videos. I have no energy, I have no brain, I have no inspiration, I have no desire to create something. I don't know what it is, but it must be like kind of the false endorphin hit, or is that what they call it?
Yeah, you can call it that.
But whatever that is, but you like just by changing, seeing something different, you're getting it, like you're feeding that thing. So even if it sucks, you're just like, well, it's different, right? Like whatever that is, that sucks my brain right out my body. If I do that too long, if I do that for a couple of days, I feel like I've been down, I don't know, a rabbit hole, something. It's not even a rabbit hole. At least a rabbit hole, I feel like you go into something wanting to learn something, and then you might have hit a few dozen stops, but at least you've learned something new.
Right.
But like just this.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a rabbit hole. I mean, just the other day, I was on the TikTok machine and I saw this new thing where they are purposely, they're doing this on purpose. They are purposely triggering dads. Like in my day, are you crazy? But here's the trigger. Now, most of these homes, they have 60, 70-inch TVs. It's like the dad's domain. He's got this recliner sitting in front of it. It's his peace space, right? And so there's this I guess I don't know what it is, but it's this app that makes the TV look broken. It looks like the TV's broken. And they're literally filming this. They're recording their dad, and then he comes in and sees the TV that looks destroyed. It looks like someone did something, and now everything is out of whack. And the guy goes berserk. I mean, these guys are having really visceral, emotional feelings about a TV. And everybody in the family is laughing and they're getting a good hee out of dad's pain that you just triggered. And I don't understand it. Why would you go to such lengths to anger the source of your sustenance? You know, it's really crazy that you would make your dad that angry. But what's really crazier to me as I'm watching it is how much power that TV has over dad. You know, and I'm not any different. I was the same way, you know, especially when it came to my video games and stuff like that. I haven't played in over a year and stuff like that. You know, I realize when you start to realize that these things have power over you, like, and it's not about your intention, guys. The game is no longer what you're intending. What they're really after is your attention. Attention is way more powerful than your intention. And I know that sounds like a tongue twister, but if you really thought about it, you have to drop the ticky-tock and stop the swiping. But if you really thought about the difference between their after your attention to supersede your intention, you can have the greatest intention in the world, but the moment they grab your attention, that intention is gone. You're no longer focused on what you have to do because now they got you in this loop. They got your attention. You know, and I remember we were growing up, that used to be the thing we used to say to people, man, like, hey, man, pay attention. We used to do that all the time to each other. You know, it was like a real jokey thing. But when you catch someone daydreaming, you know, you hit them with, hey, man, pay attention. You know? So
that's like what our parents said to us when we were in trouble. Basically, they're like, well, no, it was sarcastic.
yeah,
You know, because it was like if you tripped, man, pay attention. Pay attention where you're going.
right. Get out
Like
of clouds.
and I'm talking about kids. You could be like 5. And be like,
Yeah,
you tripping over toys. Pay attention, pick up your toys.
because your attention is your awareness.
And that's what, but that is what we are that for children until they can be it for themselves. And so that is what you're teaching them as a being of earth, right? That you have to pay attention to your environment because if you're in a dangerous
Especially being a
environment.
girl.
But yeah, but totally, it is that, and I think that the more that we understand our power in that. So what attention is, but if y'all don't know, but what attention is your light, is your love, is your divinity. Attention is awareness. It's just another way of saying awareness.
Which is another way of saying consciousness.
Anything you look at and bring your energetic power to, which is just your brain and your attention, you're giving it the power. You're giving it. That's literally the definition.
Yeah, giving your power away.
So, yeah. So the more we understand that, the more we can start choosing where we're giving our power. Right. So that's why I like using things like this as a really like a really useful way to start reorienting what I want my energy to be doing, right? So, like, if I'm clicking on something, I'm going to ask myself, why am I clicking on this? What is interesting about this to me? And if I'm getting too far away from that, it's usually one of those things you need, like what do you call it, a fast? You need a fast off of social media. You need a fast off of clicking. You know, this one dude does dopamine is what they call it.
Yeah.
Like a dopamine fast, you literally can't do anything. Like they went like the best dopamine fast is in a dark environment with no anything. Because the body can use anything as a dopamine reward. Did you know that? Like breathing is a dopamine reward. Walking outside is a dopamine reward. Like doing anything. Like that blew my mind when I heard that. But it's true because we are rewarded by our design, our genes, our DNA, our way of forming and organizing power and energy, right? We're made to do. So anything you do
and be rewarded for it.
will give you a dopamine hit. So what you want to do is develop your own addictions. You want to be addicted to what you care about. You want to be addicted to what you're creating. You want to be addicted to relationships with the people you love. And I don't mean in a codependent way. I mean in a co-creative way, right? Where you're both creating love together. You're creating something together, right? So
I think it's a bigger
powerful.
I think even the word triggered. It's like the newest word. It's a new word. It's as new as gaslighting. You feel me? Like really all of this. And that's why we're doing these episodes about it, and hopefully the people our age is starting to get the correlation of these new words. That's your generation, the Gen Zs and the Gen millennials that you guys have created these new terms, but they are very impactful. They do have an impact on your life. They have more of an impact on your life than our words before because the game is really your attention. You understand? There are no more newspapers. Not like that, right? There aren't any more news stations that get your attention the way it used to get your attention, right? We're not really being aware of what's pulling our attention away, you know? And what it is, guys, is, your body can get so used to that dopamine hit to where you don't get any more for those same old things. And hopefully that's a good thing. Hopefully you'll start getting your dopamine by looking at a tree or watching a bird or something like that, which used to be fascinating to us. Like we couldn't get enough of looking at the sky, looking at the clouds, being in a storm. Those are the things that got me excited as a kid.
That's true. I used to love looking at birds, when I was a kid, and then and clouds.
Yep, I was a cloud fanatic.
They taught us about clouds when we were in elementary school. They came in with a whole program around Florida and its habitat and how it's different from everything else in the U.S. And so one of the things that we learned was geology about like the clouds, and we learned cumulus, nimbus, cumulonimbus, all the different kinds of clouds, cirrus. Like we learned all of that. I still remember to this day because I would look up in the sky and be like, "That's a cirrus cloud. That's a cloud."
And if you're in Florida, that's a cloud that'll kill you.
Exactly. Like that one does lightning. I know that one.
Yep. And it's looking for me. Yeah. Florida, you've never been to Florida. They tell you better get out of that rain. It'll kill you. That Florida rain, Florida storms have killed people. And I'm not talking about hurricanes. I'm talking about lightning strikes.
That's normal storm because it's a real storm has lightning.
Yeah.
That's what we know in Florida. Like if it's raining really hard, that's not a storm. Okay.
No, it's just rain.
A storm is literally electrical currents going through the water. And so sometimes it's, the lightning comes down. And yeah, it has killed
Not
people.
sometimes, it comes every day.
Well, in the summer, it is
Every day.
pretty consistent. I have to say,
Yeah.
it used to be, at least when I was growing up. Um, but more importantly, but when I say wild, I mean it's like you're in the Serengeti. It's like you, like thunder would be clapping over your head,
And it comes like that.
and it will shake your chest like it's so loud. And so you would think that's right over your head. No, that's probably about 5, 10 miles out. How do I know? Because I can count lightning because I grew up in Florida.
Let me tell you something. And when those storms, and they come up quick, man, and when the people see them, it's like Godzilla just stepped on land. Oh, Godzilla, Godzilla, and they just take off. Like, Florida storms are very dangerous, and the clouds look like they want to kill you. Like,
Yeah.
you ever seen a cloud that looks like it wants to kill you?
That's why I call it wild because it's like physical and it feels like anger.
Yeah. And I've always seen shapes in clouds. Those clouds look evil. And I'm just being honest. But yeah, I mean, we
No,
really,
I think it's funner than that because I think a good storm, you feel electricity.
yeah,
It's wild. Like it feels like you could just go naked and run.
good luck.
They'll catch you, but it won't. They'll probably let you go because you probably have enough people in the jail.
Good
But
luck.
but yeah, no, it's like that. It feels like it gives you energy because you're just like, whoa, stay alive.
Now, when you're safe, they're amazing to watch.
Yeah, from inside and like on a porch, we used to do that.
Yeah.
And we don't have steel like because it will draw the light.
Conduct, right.
So we have more stuff like aluminum, tin, like strong combination materials, that kind of thing. Um, and so you can watch like from the poetry to like it's a movie.
Yeah. But that's crazy because those things don't interest people anymore. You know, TikTok and uh, face, Facebook and all of these social medias have really grabbed our attention, guys, and that is not a great thing. You know, it really isn't. We are beings of awareness, and when these companies, because that's who's producing these algorithms and things like that, when they got your attention, they literally got your soul. And if we started looking at it that way, then maybe we'd have a chance to say, okay, I can make a different decision. Now, here's a wisdom drop for you guys. This is the Chat GPT we'll do every week. Okay, it says healing isn't in your heart, it's in your throat. Until we can speak from truth and not from trauma, we still got work to do. Let your voice be a drum, not an alarm. Let it ring in power, not in fear. Let it be the song of the people who remembered they were divine.
Makes them want to snap. That's a chat. She could see us want to snap.
Let's get snaps and chat. Let's get chats and snap. Let's get snaps and chat.
But yeah, like I think it's so important because there is nothing more powerful than voice. I will debate somebody on that. Tell me something that's within the realm of human availability of any of most humans. Like there's people who have physical, inabilities to speak, but it's well within our grasp. Well within our grasp, whether you're rich or you're poor, right? And then you think about it, we can heal with our voices. We can call things in with our voices, even if it and that's the thing. You get to speak your mind, you get the opportunity to be heard and therefore responded to. This is
Therefore
how we
seen.
make money. This is how we build relationships. This is how we are in collaboration together to create better and more, right? And so there's nothing more powerful than that, just in the truth of that reality. If you add in energetic components that we don't even understand yet, right? We just said our attention is our energy. How much more when our attention and our voice are in sync?
aligned and pointed at one thing. That's powerful.
How much more when our third eye is involved and our interdimensionality, our heart is involved. How much more, right? We don't know yet. That's how much more. And we know a lot about a lot right now. So one of the things I've been talking about is the Pure Human book. So it says, I think it's Pure Human by Greg Braden. He just brought that out, I think, last year, something like that. Greg Braden, is that his name?
Greg Braden.
So what he's talking about is essentially the importance of us understanding our own divinity, like what we're here to experience of the divine and divine within ourselves, our ability to connect and be in contact with divine. And that a lot of us are forsaking that in an effort to speed up or to survive, right? Oh my gosh, you really have something against that?
No, I don't have anything against it. Forsaking isn't a strong enough word. We're surrendering.
That's true.
We are surrendering who we are through our attention and through our awareness. And that's to me that it has to hit a little harder because it's a serious, serious thing, guys. Like I know I use ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is here to replace you. You know, it's here to replace your creativity. Because they don't want that. Our creativity is endlessly profound. We haven't even begun to reach the depths, but every generation should be adding to what was already built. So if all of these social medias and platforms have our attention, right? Then who's going to create the next new thing? Who's the guy who's been focused on, let's just say, hydrogen since he was a child? He's been enamored with hydrogen and the possibilities of hydrogen. And, you know, who's going to create that when you're scrolling 8 hours a day? When you're in a social media beef with somebody on Facebook? I don't understand. Back in my day, those were called the telephone tough guys, you know. But we have to be more aware of where we are placing our attention. And when we can start to put our attention back on ourselves, it lessens being triggered. You know, I think why we're being triggered is because we don't know enough about ourselves. We haven't done deep dives within our own psyche. What do I like? What don't I like? Why does that bother me? What can I do for it not to bother me? You know, all of those things, you know, aren't being worked out through some of these younger generations, even the older generations. Let me not get twisted. Even some of the older generations, man, aren't learning these lessons.
Because I mean, a lot of us went straight into work. Like we didn't, and even before that, uh, school was work. Like if you weren't working, you should be schooling. If you're not school, like I don't know, but a lot of us, that's what it was. Like you had to do one or the other, or you do both.
Right.
And if you're lucky to do one, then you pay attention.
Our parents are boomers, man. Our parents are boomers.
Like so, all of that time was taken. You didn't. When I was in college, I was like, I didn't even want. Like I knew what I learned when I was a Christian growing up with my family. I was not interested in other spirituality. I was like, you know what? I got too much to do to be thinking about that right now.
Unless that's your path.
Well, it is my path. But what happened was that I realized during that time, basically, it was kind of set that I would be open, right? That I would follow the way Jesus was being, which not what people say about him, but what he was being, which was somebody who could walk in any land, somebody who was offering love to anybody and regardless of what they were doing or circumstances around them.
Right.
And that's just who I was like, that is good enough for me. I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back to it. You know what I'm saying? It was a conscious choice. It was also kind of check marking okay, I see that happening and I love this person there and I see them who they are, I'm going to come back to this, right? Like there's people you meet when you're, a little sheltered Christian and you're like, ooh, mama would say no, right? Mommy would say no, right? Or family would say no. You start meeting, what do you call it? Witches, warlocks, uh, people even just Muslim, like just different, right? And the beginning, you don't know anything about that. You don't know, and some people, if the church didn't tell them how to feel about who they are, then they just automatically ascribe, evil to them. And I knew that wasn't right, So what I did is I kept my heart open and I made a list of what I wanted to know more about because, well, better than most of the Christians I met. I'll look I'll look into that, and like to find out what was really behind the beliefs and how they really conduct themselves, what was behind what they believed life was about. I think that was way more important, understanding other people than to follow some doctrine that most of the people that are stating the doctrine can't get right, you know?
Mm.
So I stayed open to truth. I was more interested in truth. I was more interested in why would people choose something, right? What did it bring to their lives? What did it do for them spiritually? And spirituality became less about worshiping something,
Yeah,
some book or somebody,
we were in religion, we weren't in spirituality.
and more about how is my spirit gaining and growing, which is, I think, the only reason to be here in a 3D reality, right? So, anyways, that was a long. Oh,
Yeah,
I don't even know how I got on that track.
so I actually think it just brings us to,
No idea.
segment number 6, which is our last segment, and we're going to be looking forward to next week. And so here's what we're going to do from now on. If you're watching this episode, we want you to help us choose next week's episode. So I'm going to give you a couple of choices. And this one, we're going to start with this one. From religion to relationship, the inner rebellion. That's option number 1. Option number 2 is purpose versus persona. Which one is leading us? And let's get a third. And there are always like 3 options. When masculinity is wounded and femininity is fed up. Out of those 3, when masculinity is wounded and femininity is fed up, from what was the other one? Purpose versus persona. Which one is leading us? And then the third choice, from religion to relationship, the inner rebellion. So you guys choose that for us, and we'll create a show around what your choices are that we see during the week if you watch the show. And don't forget to watch the show. This is our 7th episode. We'd love for you to go through all 6 of them. None of them are. This is the longest one we've done so far, without a doubt. But the other ones are shorter in length, and they're fun. They're entertaining, and you get an insight of 2 Gen Xers coming from the divine feminine and the masculine perspective. And we love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. Definitely love to hear your feedback. So follow up with us.
Absolutely. That would be amazing to hear from you guys. Yeah. And then tell us because we have had some response on like the narcissist and empath thing. I think it is a good conversation to have, especially
Okay.
as we go through like purpose and like how we develop in relationships. I think those they will continue to brush up against each other. So here we go. So as we leave you for this time, we just want to let you know your voice is a portal. Use it with power.
And your presence is the product. should let it sell itself. Much
That's
love, y'all.
right. Much love,
We'll see you next
y'all.
week.
See you next week.